Friends, today's lecture is on role of the Statutory Commission and bodies for promotion and protection of right of minority. A statutory body is created by law or statute in order to regulate or carry out a public function. This body is created by statute in the sense that it is created by an act of parliament. A cabinet resolution can be passed to establish this body. A statutory body has to rely upon a statute to derive power. As far as rights of minorities in India are concerned, there are two statutory bodies such as the Central Waqf Council and the National Commission for Minorities. These bodies work for the promotion and protection of right of minority in the country, and they are under the Ministry of Minority Affairs, Government of India. In this lecture, we shall examine the role of two statutory bodies such as the Central Waqf Council and the National Commission for Minorities for the promotion and protection of rights of minority in India. Waqf represents an important Islamic institution that holds in trust properties and assets which are bequeathed by Muslim philanthropies and recognized by Muslim law for the common good of the community. Besides religious matters, Waqf have prominent role in the socio-economic development of the minorities, particularly the Muslim community. Better management of these institutions and fuller realization of their objectives contribute to development and progress of the society. The Central Waqf Council is a statutory body established in December 1964 by the Government of India under the provision of Section 8A of Waqf Act 1954, now subsection 1 of the Section 9 of the Waqf Act 1995, for the purpose of advising to the central government, the state governments and the boards on matters concerning the working of the state Waqf boards and due administration of the Waqf. As per the provision given in the Waqf Amendment Act 2013, the Council has been vested with more powers to issue directives to the boards to furnish information to the Council on the performance of the state Waqf boards, particularly on their financial performance. In terms of finances, under Section 10(1) of the Waqf Act 1995, the Council derives its income from the contribution received by it from the various state Waqf boards at the rate of 1% of the net income of the Waqf. All administrative and other expenses of the Council are met out from this income. The Central Waqf Council constituted 4 committees for smooth functioning of the Council from amongst its members. The 4 committees are: number 1, Planning and Advisory Committee to look after financial and administrative matters of the Council. Number 2, Waqf Development Committee to monitor the scheme of the development of urban Waqf properties. Number 3, Education and Women Welfare Committee to monitor the educational and women welfare programs. Number 4, Monitoring Committee to look after the overall functioning of the Council and to advise on the monitoring aspects. Broadly, the Council engages in 4 types of development activities which are given below. Number 1, development of urban Waqf properties. The Central Work Council has been implementing this scheme since 1974-75. Its main aim is to protect vacant work land from encroachers and to develop it on commercial lines for generating more income in order to widen welfare activities. The Council receives yearly grant in aid from the central government. Under the scheme, loan is extended to various work institutions, loanee work institutions in the country for taking up economically viable buildings on the work land such as commercial complex, marriage halls, hospitals, cold storage, etc. In return to the service rendered by the Council, it puts two conditions on the loanee work institutions, such as the loanee work institutions should pay 4% donation on the outstanding loan to the education fund for the educational scheme of the Council meant for educational upliftment of the poor Muslims. After the repayment of the loanees should spend 40% of their enhanced income on the education of the Muslims, particularly on technical educations. Number 2. Scheme for strengthening of State Work Board. The scheme provides for financial assistance to the State Work Boards through the Central Work Council for protection, development and better management of Waqf all over the country. Number 3. Scheme for computerization of the records of the State Work Boards. This scheme was initiated in 2013. The Central Work Council is the implementing agency of the scheme. Number 4. Educational scheme. The 4% donation received from the loanee works on the outstanding as well as the interest accrued on the bank deposits of the revolving fund form the education fund of the Council. It gives special importance to technical education. A Minorities Commission, a non-statutory body, was set up by the Ministry of Home Affairs in January 1978. The reason behind the creation of the body was that, despite the safeguards provided in the Constitution and the laws in force, there persists among the minorities a feeling of inequality and discrimination. Minorities Commission became one of the institutions for effective enforcement and implementation of all the safeguards provided for the minorities in the Constitution, in the central and state laws, and in the government policies and administrative schemes enunciated from time to time. Minorities Commission became a statutory body with the enactment of National Commission for Minorities, or in short NCM Act 1992. It was renamed as the National Commission for Minorities, and the first statutory commission was set up on May 17, 1993. NCM adheres to the United Nations Declaration of December 18, 1992, which states, "States shall protect the existence of the national or ethnic, cultural, religious, and linguistic identity of minorities within their respective territories and encourage conditions for the promotion of that identity." The main objectives of NCM is, as mentioned in the law, to safeguard the interests of the minorities, evaluation of progress of development of minorities in the country, monitoring of the working of the safeguards provided in the Constitution and in laws enacted by Parliament and the state legislatures, and making recommendations for the effective implementation of safeguards for the protection of the interests of the minorities by the central government or the state governments. Besides, it is the responsibility of the Commission to look into specific complaints regarding deprivation of rights and safeguards of the minorities and take up such matters with the appropriate authorities and to suggest appropriate measures for the development of minorities. The Commission has all the powers of a civil court trying a suit and, in particular, in respect of the following matters, namely, summoning and enforcing the attendance of any person from any part of India and examining him on oath, requiring the discovery and production of any document, receiving evidence on affidavit, requisitioning any public record or copy thereof from any court or office, issuing commissions for the examination of witnesses and documents, any other matter which may be prescribed. As per Section 9, Clause 1 of the NCM Act 1992, the Commission is entrusted with the following functions: to evaluate the progress of development of minorities under the Union and states, to monitor the working of the safeguards provided in the Constitution and in laws enacted by Parliament and the state legislatures, to make a recommendation for the effective implementation of safeguards for the protection of the interests of minorities by the central government or the state governments, to look into specific complaints regarding deprivation of rights and safeguards of the minorities and take up such matters with the appropriate authorities, to cause studies to be undertaken into problems arising out of any discrimination against minorities and recommend measures for their removal, to conduct studies, research and analysis on the issues relating to socio-economic and educational development of minorities, to suggest appropriate measures in respect of any minority to be undertaken by the central government or the state governments, to make periodical or special reports to the central government on any matter pertaining to minorities and in particular difficulties confronted by them, and any other matter which may be referred to it by the central government. Section 2C of NCM Act 1992 stipulates that minority for the purpose of the Act means a community notified as such by the central government. Therefore, all the functions of the Commission as laid down in Section 9(1) of the Act are related to 6 notified communities. In addition to the functions of the Commission as laid down in Section 9(1) of NCM Act 1992, the Commission has not been empowered to provide for any service or operate any fund for welfare schemes of the minority communities. The NCM has met many of the demands from the minority communities. These demands are placed as recommendations to the central and state governments, and many of them have been given compliance. Few notable recommendations which have been met by the governments include the establishment of National Minorities Development and Finance Corporation formed in 1994, proportionate representation of minorities in the armed forces and police, central paramilitary forces and state police forces for respective states to reflect secular character and others. As observed by the Ministry of Minority Rights, despite the safeguards provided in the Constitution and the laws in force, there persists amongst minorities a feeling of inequality and discrimination. Thus, in order to preserve secular traditions and to promote national integration, the Government of India is of the firm view that effective institutional arrangements are required for the enforcement and implementation of all the safeguards provided for the minorities in the Constitution, in the central and state laws, and in the government policies and administrative schemes enunciated from time to time. Precisely on account of this vision, statutory commissions and bodies were created by Acts of the Parliament. Since their establishment, the CEC-UGC and NCM have worked tirelessly towards the promotion and protection of rights of the minority. We need to remember what Mahatma Gandhi said